You kids are soft. It's time now to turn this mush into muscles. There is no bathroom.
Hello, I'm Luke and this is the Broken Meeple, a show devoted to board games where I give reviews and top 10s. That's kind of what you expected, right? Good. And this is another top 10. This one is one I've been meaning to do for a long time. Sorry it's taken so long for me to get to this one. But there's a term that we use in gaming called gateway games. And this is generally regarded for games that you use to get other people who are non-gamers into the hobby. So this is the first one I'm going to show you. You've never played board games before? Nothing since the 80s? You're kind of new to this thing, you just want to dip your toes in? Well, this is a game that I would bring out for you. Now, the usual ones get mentioned all the time when you ask this question. What's a good gateway game? You have everything from Catan, to Pandemic, to Splendor, to basically all those cliche titles. Now, I say cliche not because they're bad titles, but we've heard it a million times before, and we need something a little bit more up to date. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I am purposely looking at only the last 5 full years of gaming. So we are talking 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23. I'm not really going to count anything in 24, and I don't think anything's come out in 24 that I would consider to be a great gateway game at this point. But, you know, we're talking 5 years. So we're going to keep these a little bit more recent than others. You know, yes, you'll still be able to get copies of some of those older ones, but I just figured, you know what, we need to talk about some other gateway games for a change. And certainly I think there's a few on this list that you might not be thinking of yourself. Some of you might be thinking I'm about to call one of your thinky games a gateway game. Hopefully not, because generally I'm not one of these people who likes to, you know, consider that, oh yeah, Twilight Imperium is basically for kids, yeah, you know, it's totally simple, my 6-year-old can get it fine. No, that's not the way I roll. You know, I have to teach a lot of people games, including people that are new to the hobby at game clubs, and so I have to have games available that I know I can bring out for just about anybody. This can even include my family or my parents, who I really have to keep things simple for. You know, not because they're stupid, they're just getting on. But they don't watch this video, it'll be fine. But this one is a cool list to do, and it was quite tricky for me to do because when I started making the short list for this, it was getting rather long, and even as I went to collect some games for this video to showcase, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that could have been a contender. Probably not, but still. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a game I maybe have forgotten, or you might disagree with whether I think it's gateway or not, especially when I get to honorable mentions that didn't make the list. But yeah, there's still a decent amount to pick from, but these are my choice 10. So hopefully you'll get something out of this, but for now, you know the drill.
Get on with it.
So for number 10, we're talking about micro games, and micro games still have a part to play. Some people scoff over them and think, they're too light, they're too small, whatever, what do I care? Twilight Imperium and Eclipse. But no, you know, it's time to actually look at some micro games from time to time, and they do a good job of being solid gateway games. In the past, we've talked about Love Letter. Here though, we're talking about a little surprise from Career Board Games called Vegetable Stack. This one I've literally got to the point where I keep it in a tiny little hobbycraft case. That's how small this game is, you know. I can literally carry it in my coat pocket and not have problems with it. But this is a really surprising little game to show to people who've never seen a game in their lives, because the rules are literally this. A small card, and half of that is variant rules, so pretty much, and setup. So gameplay is basically that, and a tiny bit there. That's it. That's all you need for the rules. You can teach this game in about 20 seconds. And it is very straightforward. It's basically a stock market game with veg. You've got the different veg like carrots, tomato, and broccoli. They're at different prices. You have a tableau of cards in front of you to pick the various vegetables. You take it in turns each round to draft one of these in an open draft set up to your hand. And then by the time 6 rounds are done, you're going to have 6 of these cards in your hand. And you're going to total up your monetary value based on the prices of the vegetables, with the card that's left over in the draft will influence the prices as the game goes on. That's pretty much it. Could have done it a bit faster, but hey, I'm trying to talk in the top 10, give me a break. Never! But the game is really that simple. That's all it is. It's just a deck of cards and about 30 seconds worth of rules. But it's still a good little fun filler. It does the job. You're done and dusted with this game in about 10 minutes, which is what a micro game should be, so it's faster than something like Love Letter if you're playing it all the way through. But you can play with a couple of little variant cards to spice things up a bit if you want. But even if you don't, even if you just literally play this at face value, it's still an entertaining micro game, and more to the point, it's dead simple and easy for anybody to learn. Like, nobody should struggle with this game. The rules are just frankly too simple. Pop it in a little case like this, keep it in your pocket, and you're guaranteed to sort out anybody's day. Now, one caveat I will make with this list before I do my number 9 is that I've had to base my rankings kind of on two things. Firstly, how much do I enjoy the game and teaching it to other players, but also how much of a gateway game is it? Because there are a few on this list that you might think, is that a gateway game? And so I do bring it down the list if I think it's maybe crossing that threshold a bit. This one's definitely not crossing the threshold. This is very new. Not a lot of people have played it. Most people probably haven't even heard of it, but it always draws attention when I bring it out because it is very beautiful for the price you pay. And that is a new one from Timiza called Leaf. Leaf is a dead simple game, but it's very pretty and very nice on the table. You've got essentially a tiny little player board in front of you. There you go, that's all you need there. And then you've got these tuck boxes here for like efficient storage, which for the cheap price point of this game is really nice to have. But the idea is that you are placing down these leaves. They come in different shapes and different colors, and you place them down so that the tips touch other leaves. So you're effectively creating this really cool little pattern here. But the idea is that you get as many actions as tips that you touch in a round. So let's say I do this one here. I am touching 4 tips. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I get 4 actions. But the actions that I get are based on the colors of the leaf I'm touching. So I get 2 yellow actions and 2 brown actions. Okay, so what are these actions? They're all explained on here. And you know, the scoring's on that side. The actions are all on this side, and they're dead simple. Green, draw more cards that you use to play the leaves. Orange, gain animal cards. Collect sets of them, score points. Brown, move a space up this little track with a squirrel token, and you get more little bonuses, and you get points for being highest up there. Yellow, you simply get a sun token. You can trade in so many of them for points and advance in the game timer. And red, you grow mushrooms on your various leaves, and these mushrooms basically mean that if somebody comes along and touches your leaf, you get some more sun tokens. That's pretty much the actions of the game. It really is that straightforward. You got a couple of little extra bits like, you know, what you can do with leaves in order to discard them to grow mushrooms and things, but you know, everything is explained on this little strip here. And then if you're wondering, well, how do you score at the end of the game? Flip it over. And that's it. That's all the rules in this game. There's very little to explain. The rulebook is big purely just because of the size of the box, but there's not a lot in here, and there's good pictorial examples of how things work. You know, the end of the book is mainly just forest facts about the various creatures, and even a solo mode is included if you just want a nice simple game to yourself. But this is a nice little surprise. Again, much like Vegetable Stock. I wasn't expecting much from it, but it just ticks a lot of boxes that you want for a gateway game. You want it to be a, not necessarily always relatable theme, I mean, leaves, whatever, but you know, you want it to be an appealing theme. Nature. Nature's nice, it's colourful. I like nature, it certainly appealed to me, even though this is abstracted in some ways. You've also got the fact that it's colourful, pretty on the table, so it ticks that box as well. Then you need simple rules, you need enough depth so that it's not just boring, but you also don't want it to overcomplicate itself or put people in a situation where they're like, I'm not really doing very well, this kind of sucks really. You want people to just be engaged through it, and you just want it to be kind of light and fluffy at times, and this one is a very light and fluffy game. Very simple, easy to get out, easy to play, does the job.
I admire its purity.
Right, I'm afraid I don't have this one to showcase for you because it's in a crate downstairs where I've got a lot of these small games packed up into similar hobbycraft stuff to before, but you'll see from the pictures what I'm on about. This is a trick taker game, and it's a very popular one, certainly one of the most unusual trick takers that there is, but it's very simple, particularly if you are used to trick taking games. Now, there is an element of difficulty if you've never played a trick taking game in your life, but even then, this game is not that complex to do, and that is the crew. And I'm more specifically talking about Mission Deep Sea, but frankly, if you can only get the space one, whatever, they're very similar. I just think the sea one is a little bit more streamlined in places. But it's very simple. You've got a lot of replay value with all the different scenarios that you have, and they do throw in an extra small rule now and again. But the main concept of the game is that it's co-op trick-taking. So you have the cards in front of you, and your standard trick-taking rules, so play a card, must follow suit, highest card wins, there's a couple of trump cards in there as well. But the idea is you can't talk to each other. You can signal certain stuff to each other with a token and various other things in the scenarios maybe, but for the most part you have to essentially go, right, we have these objectives to do. You need the 6 pink, you need the 2 yellow, and I need the 3 green, and it must be the last trick of the round that I win. Okay, so I've now played a 7 pink, and you now have to sort of think, why did he play a 7 pink? That means he probably doesn't have the 6. Well, I don't have the 6, so probably you have the 6. Okay, well if I play a card and they're forced to play the 6, then he'll win it. So let me play a low pink then. I'll play a 3 pink. If they've got the 6, they'll play the 6 pink, and then they get the 6 pink. Okay, great.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
I think I've mixed up 1 or 2 aspects there, but you get what I'm saying. You basically have to try and figure out what other players are thinking. And that may sound complicated for a gateway game, but the rules are very straightforward. And if you fail one game, play another one. And another one, and another one, and another one. The game's like 5 minutes a piece. So it may take you a few games to get used to it, but in the time it takes you to play several games of the crew, you've played 1 game of something like Splendor. It's really that fast. And there's like 50 odd scenarios of different like difficulty levels in there, and the basic, like the first 10 or so, don't add very much. They're very straightforward. So just play through the first few scenarios to get used to it if need be, and then as you get more used to the game, you can build up to the more complicated stuff. The slight caveat with this one is that it is better when you play it with a group that either know trick-taking games or a group that you play this with repeatedly. I mean, if you're playing this in the family and it's just the 3 or 4 of you, preferably 4 of you, I think 4 is a good number, this is a solid hit. You know, it will introduce you to the trick-taking mechanic, which I really like, but it's one of those innovative little titles. I mean, co-op combined with trick-taking. We never thought that was even possible, and we kind of scoffed at it when it first came out, thinking like, there's no way, this is going to be a gimmick, right? Hey, screw us, what do we know? It did well, it is very popular, a lot of people love it, and I'm one of them. Okay, my number 7 is a little bit of a cheat, because I'm technically putting 2 games here, because they are kind of similar.
You can't do that! Hey, you can't do that!
One came out and took the gaming world by storm. It was like the ultimate like group party game that you were going to play. Another one came out shortly after, which was a little bit more thinky and a little bit more meaty, and it's the one I prefer, but you do have to gauge your audience and how many players you have. If you haven't guessed it already, then let me show you 2 games here. Firstly, the meaty version, So Clover, and then also the less meaty version, Just One. Now, party games still count, people. It's not an invalid choice here. But this one you can kind of pick your poison with, because they are both very similar games. Just One is literally, you essentially have a bunch of clue cards with words on them. Somebody will have it facing away. They'll pick one, so let's say berry in this case. Everybody has a dry erase thing with a pen. I've had to replace the pens in there because they run out so quickly. That is one downside. And the idea is that each person writes a single word clue on here that's going to help me guess berry. The problem is, if they write a clue word that somebody else writes down, they're cancelled out, and you can't confer. So you've got that cool little bit of angst of, do I go with the really obvious clue word here, thinking that everybody else is going to think twice, or do I go with something a little bit more abstract and complex? Problem is, how abstract and complex? That is it. That is basically the game. But this one is played so often. I think our Southampton club plays this pretty much every time because it's just so easy to bun it out for 10 minutes. You can play it for 5 minutes, you can play it for 50 minutes. It doesn't matter. You can just keep playing it until others turn up. So it is the ultimate get out and play it, and it's so easy to teach to a new person, but if you know what you're doing, then you literally get it out and you're done in 5 minutes. But the rules are literally 5 minutes worth of explanation. So you've got Just One there for a kickoff. I slightly prefer So Clover because I want something a little bit more meaty, but I've had good luck showing this to new players who have not got into games before, and this one is essentially a meatier version of it. So again, dry erase pad and a board and some words. The difference with this though is that you get a bunch of these little words that go on the Clover piece like so. You put them on randomly, and then on the sides you have to write down a single word that is related to the 2 like words that are next to it. So for example, I take out duck and father. Okay, I'm not going to spend ages, I don't know, can I think of a good clue word with that? Let me think.
3 weeks later. 3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
Oh yeah, Donald. Why don't I just put Donald? That was a bit easier than I thought. But you get what I'm saying. You try to come up with a clue word for each of the clovers, and then you put it out, and with the the clue words off the clover, and the rest of your players at the table have to work together to try and guess which ones went where. So it's a co-op at the end of the day. But this one requires a little bit more thinkiness than the other one. But again, the rules are dead simple, the components are nice, and it's cheap as anything. I mean, both of these games I think you can pick up for 15 quid max. You know, that's like the most you should pay for them. But when it comes to getting people who have never seen a board game into this hobby, there's very few games that you can do that are better than this. Do I want to play these over and over again? No, that's why they're a bit lower on the list. But you can't deny, these did the job. And I'm kind of jealous that I didn't come up with them myself. Now this one you might consider a bit of a cheat, because I said I wasn't going to talk about games that were older than 2019. Well, I haven't, technically, although this is based off a game that came out much earlier than 2019. It's a two-player spin-off of a gateway game, and it still remains a gateway game despite that, but it's still really solid. And I'm talking, of course, about the two-player version of Splendor, Splendor Duel. This is one that if you've just got two of you and you want a gateway game to show, this is one of my favorites that you can pull out. It still uses pretty much the same rules that Splendor has. You have a bunch of cards, they have requirements for what gem pieces they need, you collect the gems, you spend them on the cards, you accumulate points. The slight twist with this compared to normal Splendor though is that you have a board where the tokens will be laid out, and you basically choose the gems off this board by taking so many in a row, but you have restrictions on what you can take. And as the board runs out, you have to like repopulate it with more gems, but you're worried about emptying it yourself because you might give away these little scroll tokens to the opponent that let them do crazy janky things, effectively giving them an advantage. You've got a few like very easy abilities that key off the cards, and you've got 3 ways to win, clearly illustrated on here. Very dead simple, but it's just a cool twist on a game that I already really enjoy. I really like Splendor, but if I've got a choice between playing Splendor Duel with 2 players or Splendor with 2 players, I'm going to play Splendor Duel any day, because this one is definitely a better game overall. The only downside that I have come across though is that my dad being a little bit colorblind means I can't really play this with him, because the gemstones aren't differentiated enough on these cards to really cater for colorblindness, and he was struggling a little bit, especially as some of these look a little bit too similar to each other. You know, I mean, the black and the red gems look pretty much identical in terms of their shape and like shape and disguise, but if you can't tell the difference in the colors, you're going to struggle. Just that little caveat there.
Dog, pig, dog, pig, dog, pig, pig, dog. Loaf of bread, system error.
But yeah, I really enjoy this. Does not take long to play, does not take long to teach. It's pretty simple enough for a gateway game, but there's a decent amount of depth here to make you want to come back for more plays and think, right, okay, you beat me in that one, but I know what I'm doing now, so come on, game 2, let's do this. And that's the sort of thing you want from a 2-player game. You know, you get used to it pretty quickly, the rules are straightforward, but there's enough depth to make you want to come back and show that spouse what they're made of. My number 5 I know is a gateway game because I taught it to players who had never really played games before, including my sister-in-law, and she was quite the fan actually. In fact, she bought it fairly frequently after I taught it to her, much like a lot of games I've showed her. But this one is a Pencil First game. Now, Pencil First have done a lot of games where they've done very simplistic ideas, and you might have heard me talk about one called Herbaceous in the past. Very simple, easily gateway level, doesn't have a huge amount of replay value, but it is nice and light and fluffy. Not aware if that came out in the 5-year limit, but even if it did, I wouldn't pick that one. I would pick the one that came after, Floriferous. This has always been in my top 100 at least the last 2 times that I've been doing the list. And this, besides looking gorgeous, I mean, you know, art from Clementine Campardo, I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right, but you know, a very nice flower artist, and that is essentially what this game is. It is all about flower cards, each one looking drop dead gorgeous and pretty on the table.
I think she's pretty.
Quiet, bud.
Essentially, you lay out about a bunch of columns with the various flower cards in it. Each of you has a pawn piece that you use to, you know, decide turn order. So from this perspective down, essentially the one at the top is going first, and then the one at the bottom is going last. So in turn order, you decide which one of the next cards you want. I think, well, you know what, I need a poppy card, so I'm going to go here. And then somebody else will decide, all right, I'm going to go pick the daisy, and so forth. Once you've then taken the cards off and done what you need with the rest, the turn order's now changed. And now you're going to move on to the next column, and the next, and the next, and you've got 5 columns with slightly different setup, with each particular row. But on top of that, you've also got scoring cards that you put below the various cards, and each one is very simple. I mean, they score you for having lots of different colors, 3 points for every bee symbol on the card, 2 points for every yellow flower, up to 7 points if you get a lot of different bugs on the cards. They're very simple, but these are at the bottom of the columns. So each time you have this wonderful little turn angst of going, right, well, I could really use that card, but then I also want that scoring condition as well, so maybe I should take the scoring condition, but if I do, that means I'm going last next round. What's in the next column? Well, I would like that card. Do I think you're going to take it? I reckon you want poppies. I reckon that lily is safe. I think. Not entirely sure. Oh, I'm not sure. And you get that every round, but not to the point where it makes you feel anxious or, really, it's too stressed out. It's still a light, fluffy game at the end of the day with very straightforward rules. And by the end of it, you've got a nice little tableau of really nice looking flowers. And every time I've taught this, they wanted to play it straight after again. This is one that actually manages to get repeat plays, particularly with, it works as a 2-player, 3-player, 4-player. There's a solo mode in it, which is a little bit on the lucky side, but you can play it if you're that way inclined. But I mainly just bring this out for 2, 3, 4 players if I need something to kill 30 minutes, because it really doesn't take that long. You go through 5 columns, 5 columns, 5 columns. Done. That's it. 3 rounds and you're done. But for the production quality of this, for the artwork that's in it, this is just a really nice, light, fluffy game that's perfect for gateway level.
You don't slap me!
For my number 4, we are going into probably the biggest box of all the games that I'm going to showcase here. But big box doesn't always have to mean stupidly complicated, though tell that to Mind Clash Games.
Making it bigger doesn't make it clearer.
Now this one is a very simple game. It's a spin-off of one of my favorite drafting games with rules that are so simple they're pretty much could be summarized on one sheet of paper. It's that simple. But for the production quality that you get, you'd be surprised that this game is as simple as it is, and that is, of course, 7 Wonders Architects, specifically Architects. Some people will claim that 7 Wonders is a gateway drafting game. No, seriously no, it is not. Get off your high horse on that one. 7 Wonders is not a gateway game. This one is. Now, you might notice a bit of box lift. That's because it's got the medals expansion in it. You can check out my review video for that. But even with the expansion in it, this is still a gateway game because medals was such a simple include. But essentially, you have this little tray of cards to the left and right of you, as well as a common deck in the middle. And you'll have the top card of the neighboring decks face up, and the other one will be face down. You have a wonder that is flipped over with like little tile pieces that you have to build up during the game. But all you literally do is just decide, do I want that card, or one off the top. The one off the top you're getting at random, but you can see what you and your neighbours have got. But of course, your other neighbour can also take the card on their go. So it's like, well, this wood card would be useful, but do I take it or do I hope that you don't take it? Because I kind of want this military card over here. You've got that very easy decision to make each turn, but that's pretty much what the turn is. You choose a card, resolve it, done. Next player. And it just goes round until somebody manages to build their entire wonder, at which point total up the victory points. And the way you get points in this, again, is dirt simple. You've got green science tokens, they give you points or special abilities which are easily explained in the book. You've got blue cards, they just give you flat points. You've got the red cards which let you sort of fight your 2 neighbours, not in a proper fight or anything like, dastardly. It's just compare how many shields you've got to your neighbours. Whoever's got the most out of the 2 of you will get a 3-point bonus or whatever it is. It's very straightforward things like that. And the game goes lightning fast. There's very little downtime. Even in 7 players, you haven't got to wait too long. Maybe a little bit longer than most, 7 players is 7 players. But you don't have that much to do on your turn. Take a card and resolve the simple ability. Turns can literally be like a couple of seconds long at times. You'd be surprised how quickly it gets back around to you. But I'll still happily play this with just 3 people. I mean, you can play this with anywhere between 2 to 7 players. There's even a 2-player variant in here. Not that I even recall I've played it at 2 players actually, but I'll still play this with 3 or 4. You just want something nice and quick. It may look like a big box, but like I say, all you've got to do is just put the common deck in the middle, have the trays nearby with the other tokens that you might need, give everybody one of their wonders, they get the stuff out, done. That's it. And then when you pack it away, you just shove it in here and then put it back in the box. Nice and simple, nice and quick, looks the part, always draws attention because of all these trays, and you'd be surprised that a box this big would have a gateway game in it. Yes, it's not going to be the most brain-burning, demanding thing that you ever play, but you want to get people into, you know, a few like sort of Euro mechanics of cards with different abilities, or like, you know, different things that you can aim for, like other, like maybe multiple paths to victory in a sense, then this is definitely one to consider. So for my number 3, we're going kind of into the realm of party games, although it's debatable if this is a party game or not. But a while ago, you would have seen people talk about a game called Dixit, and with good reason. Dixit's a very good party game where you've got these really fun and wacky art cards. People are giving clues, and you're trying to interpret what the clue relates to in terms of these picture cards. It's one of my favorite party games because it is just, I like that whole interpreting art aspect of it. Well, a game came out called Mysterium, which allowed you to effectively play Cluedo with the Dixit cards. Solve a murder, who did the murder, where did they do it, and what weapon they used, but you had to do it from a ghost character who spoke in silence, and they used art cards in order to communicate to the players in a co-op. Well, I'm not talking about the big Mysterium, even though that is still for some reason on my shelf, and I must debate as to whether I'm keeping it or not, but I'm talking about the spin-off. Mysterium Park. This one came out, and I did a video on this one quite a while ago, but you're welcome to check it out. And it came out in a compact box like this, so it's a lot more portable. And the idea is that this effectively simplifies the bigger version of Mysterium, and it is the one that I play pretty much religiously more often than the big one. Because the big one has a big DM screen you've got to set up, there's more to it, it's a bit more involved, still great fun, but this one, it's so dirt simple. I mean, you basically have everything themed around a nighttime circus, and why haven't you made Mysterium like camp, Mysterium school and all that? I'm gonna rant about this every time I talk about this game, Libaloot. Why have you not done it? Seriously, hurry up and do it! Once you get over that little rant though, the premise is simple. Again, you have these art cards, which are really cool, really fun, and really sort of weird at places. And to be honest, you could pretty much use any Dixit deck with this. They're all interchangeable and compatible. But the idea is that the ghost character will have a grid card that shows which grid, like what players belong to what card that they're trying to figure out. This time you're only doing 2 rounds, not 3. You don't care about the weapon, you just care about the person and the location. And these will be laid out, you know, different characters, and essentially the players have the same deal. So the ghost has to give them the art cards and saying, right, you need to get this little fortune teller here. Well, I mean, I've got something that's at night. Have I got anything with stars on? I got one about space, you know, I got a little space one here. So you know what, you're gonna get this card. And I can't communicate this to you, but you as a group discuss what I'm trying to carry over. And I could be abstract, I could be pointing to something very obvious. It's down to how you know me. That's the way it is. But I love playing the ghost character in this. Having to play silently, and you're sort of just like, right, I've given you your cards, and you just sit there and listen and wonder whether you want to garrot any of them later on, because they're constantly leading people on tangents.
That was pretty brutal even by my standards.
I mean, you're a ghost after all, you're just somewhere in between the likes of Casper and Zool, you know, so there's that. But this game is just really good fun. I love these art cards. People get into this really easily. You can play the game in about an hour, that's all it takes. 2 rounds, you've got 6 rounds max, plus a finale if that's how long it takes, but you could end it sooner than that. And then if you want to play it again, just swap around who's the ghost and go again. You've got enough characters for variety, enough locations, and because they're all themed around the same area or a circus, it means that it's quite hard to differentiate some of these characters. So you're trying to avoid giving people cards that might point them somewhere else, but who knows how they're going to think. You know, that's the beauty of this game. Very simple, very easy to teach, looks the part with all this gorgeous art cards, comes in a really nice box with an insert that is actually designed really well. Oh my god, yes. Take note, it is possible to make an insert that works, people. I recently got the Robinson Crusoe Kickstarter. I'm still venting a little bit about that one. But, you know, this one I really enjoy. I love Mysterium already. It was one of my favorite games. It still is technically my favorite game, but if I'm going to pull one out, I'm going to pull this one out. It's just cheaper, easier, faster. What's wrong with that for a gateway game? When I came up with this list idea to do 5 years worth of gateway games, my number 1 and 2 are basically, 1 is that, 2 is that, what are the other 8? That was how easy it was to come up with these next two. Now, they are different games, minor similarities, but for the most part they are different. They both are gateway games. They both do it very, very well, but one of them is well known, and loads of people have played it, and loads of people will no doubt agree with me, I'm sure, when I get to it. But this one, I seem to be the only person on the planet who champions this game. I have pretty much kept this publisher in business with how much I keep championing this game, I swear. You know, where's my royalties? But I did a video review for it, gave it a really high rating. I have talked about it on previous top 10 lists, and I even took it to game night, I think a week ago. They'd never heard of it. We played it, took about 30 minutes tops, 35 with the teach, and it was done and dusted, and they loved it. I hope they've bought a copy of Alice's Garden. Because seriously, I'm the only one who champions this. Nobody else has heard of it. And I'm the only one who's like telling people that you should get it. This has killed other lightweight polyomino games in my collection. I used to talk about Baron Park. It used to sit right there. That is Baron Park. Baron Park is still a solid, reasonably gateway level-ish game. You know, it's a good polyomino game. Takes a little while to get to the end though. It's not the quickest game in the world, and it doesn't have the most replay value. So when this came out and gave me a polyomino game that I can play with up to 4 players in 30 minutes tops with better components and better artwork, it killed Baron Park Stone dead. This is so good and so simple, right? Yeah. Look at that. This is a game you get for about £15, people. It is that well produced. You have a bunch of these bags with like little polyomino pieces in them, and they've got different icons on the various bits, and yes, they're thin, but they're not bending in half thin, they're just thinner than some other polyomino games you might have played. But the premise is so simple. Here's your board, nice little small board, and basically what happens is that these bags are laid out in front of the players. There's a bonus bag with small pieces, but mainly these 5, and essentially the players, the turn order will keep changing as the game goes on, but basically a player goes, which one of these bags would I like? The T shape, the square, the L shape? You know what, I'm going to take the squares. And so they basically take this out. Let's move those 2 out of the way for a minute. And lay out as many based on number of players. So let's say I got to lay out 4 for this particular game. And then they pick one, put it anywhere on their board, whatever orientation they like. Next player does the same, and once all but one of them are left, next player moves on, first player marker, and they choose any of the bags again, and rinse and repeat, until eventually someone busts, they can't fit a tile on their board, and then you total up the scoring, which is based on 5 criteria that are all, well, 4 criteria technically, this one's more of a utility thing, but it's all printed on your board and easy to understand. One wants you to get so many in a column, one wants you to space them out on a row, another one wants you to get a bunch of rose bushes together. I mean, it's Alice's Garden, it's Alice in Wonderland themed. So yeah, it's abstract, whatever. They could have pasted any theme on here, but at least the scoring makes sense when you think, oh, the chess pieces score by putting them on the chess path. Go figure. You know, there's like really simple things like that that just tie in well. But for a game that's like £17, £18 on average when you buy it, my God, the component quality. I mean, you've got multiple felt bags, you've got these tiles with very colourful artwork. Okay, yes, they're thin, but they will not break. None of this stuff has broken when I bought it, okay? It's been very durable. And you get the game taught in about, like, 5 minutes tops, if that, you know, probably a lot less. And you get the game done in about 30 minutes tops with 4 players, which is not easy to do for a lot of gateway games to keep to that 30-minute time limit. And yet, you get a fun polyomino game that has you going, oh, if only I could place it like that, or where do I place it? But it removes a lot of the restrictions that polyomino games have, because normally they're like, right, you put one down and then the next one has to touch that, and then you can't build it in a certain way. This one literally just goes, right, first one could be there, next one could be there, next one could be there, next one could touch this one and go in a weird angle like that. That's it. You just got to try and not leave too many empty spaces by the end. But it's done and dusted nice and quick, you've scored up, and you can just play again or move on to your main game of the night. I constantly keep telling people that they should check this one out. And I'm not saying it's going to be like the best game you've ever played, but we're talking in context of a gateway game here. For the polyomino genre, you know, people will talk about the 2-player one, Patchwork. Patchwork's fine. I like it, I don't love it, but I've kept it because it's a 2-player game. But honestly, is Patchwork going to stay in the collection? I don't know, because I'd probably just rather play this if I was playing a 2-player polyomino game. It's just super fast, super light, super easy, and it ticks every box it needs to for this genre of game. So why am I the only person who talks about it?
Did I miss something?
So now we get to my number 1, and you know this is coming. come on. Whether you like this game or not, you knew this had to be the number one. And I would imagine that a lot of you would cry foul if I didn't put this at number one. This game is, unlike Alice's Garden, played and known by pretty much everybody in the gaming hobby. And you have families playing it, you have non-gamers playing it, you have gamers playing it. I still really like it. You have solo gamers playing it. I do play it solo now and again as well. Now, I will stipulate the expansion is not worth it. We'll get onto that later. But you can't deny this game is just a gateway classic of the last 5 years. Of course, it's Cascadia. What else is there? This game is just perfect for this type of thing. I mean, it looks beautiful. Illustrated by Beth Sobel, who does a lot of really nice looking nature artwork. But the rules are very simple in this, yet they can be tailored for different people that you're with. I mean, if you have got people who are newish to games but can handle complex stuff, you can play a more complex version of this. But you could even just simply play a family mode. Normally you have these cards with the different animals on that you score for various criteria. There's 4 different ones in the box, A, B, C, D. If you're playing with non-gamers, just use all the A's. Fine, maybe throw in a B or 2. If you're playing with gamers, throw in all the D's, you know, and have the more complex ones. And if you're playing with kids or real non-gamers that are like brand new to the entire hobby, then just simply play the family variant. There's a card in here that literally just plays a simplified rule set for scoring. Play that and then move on to the other cards. You can do whatever it is you like, but the premise is so simple it's unreal. You basically have, and this is why you could argue it's similar to Alice's Garden, it's not quite polyomino, but you are basically placing tiles on your little area. But what you do is you basically have a few of these in front of you. Each one has animal tokens. Again, a bag full of really nice produced wooden tokens of different colors, so this definitely has a production value behind it. But all you do is basically pick one of the pairs and use it. You've got little tokens, I think they're in the box, these little pine cones that let you manipulate what you want to do with them, like maybe refresh the row or take 2 that aren't the same. But primarily you will basically go, let's say this is my starting tile, I go, right, I fancy this tile with a fox, okay? I just bolt the tile onto my little area, choose where I want to put the fox. As long as the icon's there, it matches, you can put it there. I'll put it there, great. And what you're essentially trying to do is arrange the animals based on the scoring card. So like salmon want to be in a run, birds want to be spaced out but see each other, bears want to be in a little group but not have other things or other bears around, you know, that kind of thing. But you also want to get the terrains to match. There's like water, desert, plains, marsh, you know, that kind of thing. And so you're kind of thinking, well, I'll take this tile, not because of the animal that I'm getting with it, but because the tile fits nicely, because now I create this lovely little waterway with a little bit of desert that connects to my other yellow over there. And what you end up doing is, through very simple rules, create this very nice picturesque like display of tiles in front of you with cool little animal tokens on it. It's light and fluffy. Animals are relatable as a theme, they're appealing as a theme. I mean, if you hate nature, then fine, there's no helping you. But I like nature. I don't like to go out and hug trees all the time, but I like going to a zoo. I like animals, you know, and I just, you know, this sort of thing will appeal to me. It's why I like games like Wingspan and Ark Nova and stuff like that. But this one just went over like hotcakes. Everybody has played this by now in the hobby, and the vast majority of people like it. A few people don't. Not every game's for everybody, but you know, this one gets played regularly at our game nights. I will usually take it to, you know, conventions as an easy one to play, but then it's usually in the game library, so frankly I don't even need to take my copy. I can just play this one solo. Now, I mentioned about the expansion. The expansion, not so good. It basically enables you to play this game with 6 players. Not something I ever wanted to do. I don't care what weird rule you throw into the mix to try and make it happen. It's still not as fast as you want it to be. 4-player of this is already a little long at times, but, you know, 4 players is manageable. 6? Ugh. And then the module that the expansion came with is, again, more rules, which takes it out of the region of being a gateway game, but also they're better when you play it with 5 or 6 players. So the expansion is literally only there if you want to add even more complexity for 6 players. Otherwise, there's not much point getting it. And I'm never going to. I'm going to keep it as this. Base game only. I can mess around with the cards as I want. I mean, I suppose I could get the expansion if I just want the extra animal cards, but that'd be a waste of money, I think. But it's just so simple and so nice. It's hard to get a copy of this, though. When it comes out into print, and it does come back into print, you know, it's not gone, but when it comes out and you see it in the shops, buy it. Seriously, it doesn't tend to last very long. And if I see another copy of this anywhere, sorry, I'm going to buy it. because my parents want it. And my parents have played this, they really enjoy it, and, you know, I can never get them a copy of the game because it's never in stock. But when I see it, if it's secondhand or whatever, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to instantly get them a copy because they've been asking me for one. Because it is just that appealing, that light, and yet there's still enough depth here. You know, you can complicate these cards as much as you like to, you know, make them more gamerish. But if you want to just play it family friendly, use the family card or use them all on A's, and the game is still fun. I'm not going to avoid the game if you want to play this with just the A cards. I'll still enjoy it because it's just light, fluffy, and almost zen-like, and very pretty. It's what you want a gateway game to be, and frankly, I think most of you will agree. What else was I going to put at number 1? So there you go, 5 gateway games from the last 5 years, and I didn't necessarily check to see whether I covered all 5 years with this list, but something I have noticed that I think the majority of my games were 19, 20, and 21. 22 and 23 had the occasional gateway game, but honestly, I think the last 2 years have kind of sucked for gateway games. There just hasn't really been a lot come out that I've gone, oh yeah, that's particularly decent. But there's just this upward trend at the moment for board games that they've got to be like, here's the giant box that costs £1 million, and here's your giant rule book of War and Peace, and here's 1 million rules and loads of pieces that you've got to scatter over the board, and anything less than voidful is basically for dumb people.
Monkey!
You know, that's kind of what it tends to be like at the moment, and I kind of wish we went back to some lighter fare. I like heavy games, people. I'm not opposed to them. I played Kanban the other week. I'm going to be teaching 2 games of hegemony this weekend at a convention, and I've got, you know, Vital Lacerda games by my head and 2 Mind Clash games downstairs. I do like heavy games. But I do like a nice light fluffy game every now and again, and it's good to get new people into the hobby, and I can't get a new person into the hobby with Voidfall or, you know, even my Tainted Grail underneath this table, or, you know, most of the games on this shelf. Star Wars Rebellion to get somebody new into the hobby, that Forbidden Stars, yeah, that's going to go down well, isn't it? Or as much as I like the Lacerda games, oh yeah, you know, even the Gallerist, you know, do you think I'm going to get someone new in with that? You know, there's a different market for different games, and I want to see more gateway games come onto the market, and I'm just not seeing it these days.
How hard can it be?
So I do have some honourable mentions. If I can reach the game, I'll grab it, but if not, then you'll just have to see the pretty picture. But, you know, there was quite a few. In fact, let me grab the tablet here, because the tablet's got the information on it which I need. But these ones I considered, and it was just a case that I didn't enjoy them as much as the 10 that I picked, or I'm in an iron as to whether they were gateway games. In fact, let's start with those. I considered Art Society. Art Society is a fantastic game from last year. You know, check out my video where I rave about it a lot. But I wasn't certain I would call it gateway game. The more I thought about it, as much as it's got simple rules, I thought, maybe there's just a few too many. Maybe there's just a little bit too much depth here to make it gateway game, and I decided it didn't qualify. If it did, it would have made the list, but nope, it didn't. I had to make way, and so, you know, vegetable stock effectively came back onto the list. Was there another one that I considered with that? No, I think the rest of these honorable mentions you could argue are sort of gateway games to an extent, but they just weren't enough to make the list. So I considered Point Salad. Point Salad, very easy game. You put out vegetable cards, and the flip side of the card has how you score, and you basically just collect cards and score based on what cards you take. You know, pretty straightforward. My dad loves it. It's one of his favorite card games that I can bring. We always have to play it whenever I'm at home, and yeah, granted, I'm not getting sick of it, but, you know, I don't want to play it too often because it is quite random, but it is a very good filler game, and it does exactly what it says on the box. It's a point salad. Literally, you know, it's a cool idea. Reef is over there. Reef is basically my answer to Azul, because Azul is a fine game, and you could argue that Azul is a gateway game, but I'm bored with Azul now. I mean, I'm done with the first one, and all the ones that came after it were basically just not as good. Reef is still one that I quite enjoy. You build up these reef coral pieces on your board, and you're trying to score them based on the various ways you've constructed the reef. Is it gateway? Possibly. I mean, a few people have been caught out and tripped up by it. You know, it's a bit. Spatial awareness is probably one of the skill sets for games that I find is least present in a lot of people. There's surprisingly a lot of people who aren't particularly good with spatial awareness, and you do kind of need it to be good at Reef, but still really enjoy it. Canopy I considered. Canopy, you know, one of the most beautiful card games out there. Same person who did Leaf, actually. So maybe I didn't want to put 2 on the same list, but Leaf is an easier game. Canopy is The only problems with Canopy is that maybe there's one or a few rules that take it out of gateway level, but also because it's got 1 to 4 players, but ideally you mainly play it with 2, occasionally solo, and you know, I wouldn't really play it with 3 or 4. I'm curious about the new Evergreen Canopy that's coming out. Maybe that will fix that problem, but you know, this one I was just kind of umming and ahhing. Is it gateway level? I don't know. It's a brilliant game. It's certainly light. Gateway? Just not entirely sure. What else we got? Great Plains. Great Plains is definitely a gateway game. This thing is super simple. It's 2-player only. It's basically area control tug of war, and you essentially just basically move your pieces on these hexes to try and control certain areas. You've got a few tokens that can manipulate the movement, but other than that, it's a very straightforward 2-player area control game that it's just one that I don't tend to enjoy as much as the others that I put on this list. But yeah, 2-player area control gateway game. It's difficult to get simpler than Great Plains, I can tell you. What else we got? Ohanami. Ohanami, great little card game that I've been talking about enough. You basically play columns of cards with ascending order of numbers, and you can't go in between the numbers. You have to keep going higher or keep going lower, but you're playing these cards in order to score points based on whether they're blue, green, grey, or red cards. I mean, there's like cherry blossom and there's rocks or whatever, but basically it's colors. And it's a really cool little card game, and you know, I think it would be top 15. I would certainly consider it a gateway game. It just wasn't quite enough to meet these 10. But also, as much as it's a cool little card game and it looks pretty-ish, I don't know how easily appealing it would be to people. I mean, if you say the word Ohanami, nobody knows what that means for the most part. And if I tell people it's about a card game where you basically put columns of numbered cards, you know, it's not necessarily going to appeal to a ton of folks. So perhaps it just doesn't have that appeal factor. Get on Board, the one from Yellow, which is basically the newer version of Let's Make a Bus Route. You know, that one I just thought had too many rules in it. You know, it's a good light game. I do like it, still on my shelf. But I was kind of thinking, well, hang on a minute. Trying to explain how all the scoring works in this game is a little bit on the fiddly side. And as soon as you start getting fiddly with anything, can't really be a gateway game. Fox and the Forest Duet. I can't remember if Fox and the Forest Duet came out reasonably at the same time, but the duet version I think came out within these 5 years. 2-player trick-taking co-op. Love it. I love the Fox and the Forest card games. They're really good. The duet version is basically the co-op version where you work together to meet an objective using the trick-taking mechanic, where you can't necessarily confer to each other, similar to the Crew I mentioned earlier. Really nice little game. If you want something like the Crew, but only for 2 of you, grab Fox and the Forest Duet. That's your closest bet, I think. Although, if anybody knows anything closer to that, then by all means, shove it in the comments. And lastly, is there anything left? Mention most? Oh yeah, one more. The recent game I played, Next Station London. You might be able to use Tokyo, but I've not played the Tokyo one yet. This one really surprised me. I played it for the first time recently, and I think after one play, I couldn't really put this on a top 10 list. But I played it. It was not very difficult to learn from the rulebook itself, although maybe as I think about it, there's maybe one too many rules in that game to make it gateway level, but it's certainly light and certainly really cool little like flip and write game, effectively, as they call it. Flip a card and draw on the map. But I think with these flip and write, roll and write games, as much as I'm kind of bored with the genre, I think I still like route connection ones. You've got that on tour one where you go across the map of the world. You've got Next Station where you're connecting up the routes. I think route connection is still the type of roll and write that I enjoy. Most of the other roll and writes I'm kind of done with. I don't know, Long Shot the Dice Game, I guess. But Long Shot the Dice Game, not gateway level. I'm sorry, I have taught that game many a time. It still trips people up with certain aspects of it, particularly if they've not seen a roll and write game before, and I can't really call it a gateway game. So I guess that's another honourable mention. But yeah, I was strapped for choice, and I'm sure there's ones that you guys can think of, you know, ones that are even, you know, more gateway or ones that you enjoy more. By all means, get them in the comments. We're not just talking about the 10 plus honorable mentions here. I want to know what you guys love, and I'm sure it will be useful for others. Although, I'm sure we're going to get into debates in the comments about, wait a minute, that's not a gateway game, there's too much there, and though, fair enough. We are. It's just inevitable that's going to happen. But I'd still be interested to know some of the choices, and no doubt you'll come up with some gateway games that I agree with you, that these are really cool gateway games. But I had to pick 10 of my favourites and rank them. It was tricky. I'm sure there was a lot more I could have discussed. That's why you're here, to fill in the blanks. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up and, you know, get some engagement down in the comments. As I said, let me know your thoughts. But until next time, regardless of whether your type of game is more something as fluffy as this, or something a little bit more big and insane like this, it's still, at the end of the day, only a game. So whatever is a gateway game for you, Just play it, enjoy, and hopefully you're someone new joining the hobby. Take care, see you soon.